Today on the Dad's Making a Difference podcast, I'm having a conversation with Juan Taveras. He is a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. With over 17 years in the HR world, he now is the CEO of DEI Profinder, where he helps leaders create equitable and inclusive work environments. And you're like, Cam, why is he on the Dad's Making a Difference podcast? Well, because as a father of three little girls and husband to his wife, Juan takes what he knows and what he has learned in the human resources world and relates it directly into how we raise our families. It's an incredible conversation. And today I ask Juan how we as fathers can challenge ourselves to be more accepting, more inclusive, and help our children to grow so that they accept others. And he has some amazing feedback. He's going to give 3 keys that he's teaching his daughters right now based on his experience with adults. He's going to give you the number one thing as a dad, as a professional, as a business owner, as an employee that you can start focusing on right now that's going to help you build a more inclusive, understanding, respectful, and curious family, and also help you find success and being more self-aware. This episode of the Dad's Making a Difference podcast with Juan Taveras starts right now. Juan, welcome to the Dad's Making a Difference podcast. Great to see you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Cam. Great to be here.
Juan, I got to tell you that I was really looking forward to this interview. And for those listeners right now, this guy, Juan, has been very accommodating. I had to bail on our last scheduled interview time. And I'm always like really anxious when I have to do that because, hey, we're dads and things come up. And on that day we were booked, something pretty serious came up. And so I had to take care of it. And you were so gracious and are like understanding, rebook, no problem. And I just want to, I think it speaks a lot to you, and the guys listening to this are going to learn more about you and your character and your approach, but thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no need to mention it. Like you said, we're all dads and I totally get it. Those things happen all the time. And I'm just glad we got a chance to connect.
Me too. Juan, I want you to have an opportunity to introduce a little bit about yourself. I introduced you when the episode started, but a lot of guys will be thinking like, why is Juan on the show? Why is Cam so excited to talk with him? And we'll get into that. But why don't you share a little bit about what you do professionally, a little bit about your family?
Absolutely. So I am a human resources professional. I was an HR leader up until a year and a half ago when I started my own business. But for 13 years, I was an HR leader in both nonprofit and for-profit companies. And I like to say that I've seen it all in the HR space. I've been an HR leader or department of one. So, with full scope and responsibility of all things HR. But I've also led teams, and I've also been a member of distributed teams where I was sort of I was a business partner and a member of a center of excellence as opposed to overseeing all of it. So I have a pretty vast HR experience. So dealing with people and taking care of people and creating workplaces that are inclusive and that where everyone feels valued and appreciated and seen and heard. Those are things that I'm really passionate about and why I was attracted to that work. But a year and a half ago, I got bit by the entrepreneurship bug, or bitten, and decided to leave the workforce to start my own business called DEI Profinder, which is DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So what I do now, which is pretty cool, I get to leverage or use my HR expertise, work within my passion of inclusion and equity, and also use my skill set around problem solving and making connections, and connect HR leaders to DI consultants that are doing awesome work out there. So especially now, I know one of the most common questions I get about my current work is like, how's it going with all the all the heat that DEI is getting these days? And I said, it comes with the territory, but we're chugging along, and this work is more important than ever, I would say. And then on the personal side, I am obviously married, and we have my wife and I have 3 daughters. So I'm a girl dad 3 times. Our kids are 7, 4, and She's about 20 months now. She's almost 2. So yeah, full house, but I love being a dad. I love being a husband. And yeah, excited to have this conversation with you.
Amazing. And there's so much about your background that interests me when it comes to how it parallels to being a father, being a husband, leading a family. We'll get there. But I think it's also I want to respect your expertise and the experience you have because working in DI is not easy. And it is a hot topic right now. I'm going to ask, what are some of the key things right now? Because guys are listening to this, why does Cam have him on the podcast? Because if you're listening to this right now, there are so many things that when you're interacting with other people in your community, you're setting a standard for how your family is going to interact with that community as your children
Mm-hmm.
grow. And I
Mm-hmm.
think as fathers, we have a responsibility to grow kids who love each other, love other
Mm-hmm.
people, are accepting of other people, are not a gatekeeper or a judge, but
Yeah.
will enter into open conversation. So, in your experience in this, man, with an ever changing world, what are some of the key things when we're thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion that we can, as fathers, be aware of or
Mm.
start maybe seeding and priming our kids in?
Yeah, I love that. Love that question, and everything you just shared. It definitely resonates with me, and my perspective on this work. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of connections around what I do professionally, and how my wife and I are trying to raise our daughters, and how we want to show up for our community, whether it's at school or at church or even with our own family, because there's plenty of different perspectives, even at home and in our extended family, that we have to navigate. So focusing like a couple of things that come to mind as to answer your question. One is uh, fostering a sense of curiosity in our children, right? So understanding that, and look, we have 3 girls, and they could not be more different from each other. Like, and this is something my wife and I talk about all the time. Is like, wait, we're the same parents. They're living in the same home, right? Like they're having a very similar life experience, but they could not be more different. And it comes down to their personality types, the way that they communicate and the way that they use their energy, and anyway, a number of things, right, that make them all very unique. And we want to highlight that. We want to make sure that they value that in themselves, but also in others. And that's where this curiosity comes from. It's like, and we're starting to see this more and more in our 7-year-old, where she'll get into these little arguments with her 4-year-old sister, and we've seen it. We've seen her kind of her mindset shifting to like she kind of takes a moment now. Before it used to be like a full a couple
Yeah.
maybe a year ago it was like an argument or a fight, but now it's like there's something here that I need to better understand, or and she's getting a lot better at like pulling us in when she gets into those stuck points, because she doesn't yet understand how to navigate those differences. And I love it. I love seeing that in her. And the other piece I would say is being in touch with your emotions. And this is a strong personal one for me. And I know you have a question for me later that that I'll talk more about my emotions and managing my emotions. But watching our girls at such an early age already know how to express what they're feeling,
Mhm.
and it's so important for us to create a space in our home where they can do that, where they can say, I am frustrated, I am angry, I did not like that, or I that made me feel sad, and then that being a conversation starter, as opposed to uh, us telling them that they can feel a certain way, or like they have to just deal with their emotions on their own, which is messages that I heard
Yeah.
growing up.
I think
So
many of us did, right?
yeah,
Many of us heard those messages.
yeah. But those are 2 quick things that come to mind as far as what related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we're trying to foster in our own home. And I guess the last one I'll throw in there, because this is connected to our faith, is respect, right? For our neighbors and our friends and our families, and wanting to extend love and joy, and again, a lot of curiosity embedded in that, and not judgment, like you said, to use your words, and and being closed off to others' experiences. So just
Yeah.
wanting to be good, kind people and raise good, kind people as well.
Which is fantastic. You said, curiosity, emotions, and respect. These
Yeah.
three things, I think, for any dad listening to this right now, are the three qualities or attributes they want to see in their kids as they grow up. And you said something that, that between your daughters, they have the same environment, they have the same parents, but they're very different.
Mhm.
And it just points to that we could be in different environments, we could be in the same environment, but lived experience is different than environmental experience. So if
Yes.
you're in the same space with someone and maybe you're not seeing things eye to eye, maybe you're not getting along, maybe there's a disagreement, maybe you're, I think right now is questioning maybe this other person that you work with, you live with, you're around,
Mhm.
understanding just because you're in the same environment doesn't mean you have the same lived experience, and you will each bring your unique perspectives and value to that shared environmental experience. And
So
so,
powerful.
man, I love it. I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing with your girls and the ability of your daughters to already express their emotions in a way
Yeah.
that's healthy, and not, I think maybe how you and I grew up is like, hey, I'll express my emotions all right, but I'm going to let it go to the last minute and it's going to come out usually verbally or physically, and it's not going to
Right.
be healthy. Um, and
Yeah.
then the respect, I think that's great. I think, man, acceptance doesn't mean always agreement. And
Yes.
just
I love
because
that.
through respect, we can accept other people as human beings that we love
Mhm.
and still not be in agreement with them. It's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's okay. Yes, absolutely.
Man, I love what you're doing. I'm going to ask you that question right now because you just made reference to it. I always ask guests this question, but I gave you a heads up that I might ask this earlier in our conversation. Right now, as a dad, you have your three daughters, and what is one area as a dad right now, or maybe as a husband? And I think you alluded to emotions, but what's one area right now that you're diving into that you're really looking at growing in because it's going to make a big impact in your family?
Yeah, yeah, great question. And the one thing that came to mind as I was preparing for our conversation is managing my emotions. And what I mean by that is being well, two things, right? So oftentimes with three girls and a business, and my wife also owns her own business. So we're both entrepreneurs, business
Yeah.
owners, and we've got three kids in three different schools. It's a lot of moving parts in our home.
Yeah.
So I have found myself often multitasking and or trying to multitask, because multitasking is not actually real. You're doing all things uh with only half of your attention, um if that. But anyway, I found that in those moments I was not in tune with myself. So things would while I was trying to do things and be efficient and effective, um I was I wasn't in touch with myself or in those moments. So little things would frustrate me, and I would lose my temper, or I
Yeah.
would raise my voice, or depending on the situation, I would scream or something. And I didn't, and it's it's this funny thing where, like, as soon as it happens, like, I felt like crap, right? Like
Oh yeah.
I want to take it back immediately. So it's like, all right, this is something I need to work on, and I want to focus on this intentionally. So being aware of when those moments are happening, like when I had to, like, practice identifying the triggers, right? That are what are the things that are, because it wasn't very most of the time it wasn't like a coin flip. It wasn't like 1 second, a split second reaction. It's usually a buildup, right?
Yeah.
Where it's one thing leading to another, and then, like you said earlier, a blow up of some kind. So being really aware of those triggers, and then uh, breathing through it. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing to manage my emotions is breath work. And wanting to be a better example for my girls. That's really, at the end of the day, what it is. I want them uh, to well, two things come to mind, actually, because this was also a good learning moment for my oldest daughter. To know that us as adults and as parents, we're also not perfect, right? We're also going through a growth phase of our own, as adults even. So it was good for her to see that yeah, daddy loses his cool too, and it's not okay, and we're human and it happens, but what can we learn from it and how can we do better
Love
next
that.
time? So that is something that is top of mind for me this year.
I love that. There is power. We always want our kids to learn, right? We want our kids to grow and learn. And we hear these terms thrown around: growth mindset, learning mindset. I want to have kids who are entrepreneurial and motivated and all
Mhm.
these things.
Yeah.
Your kids are never going to be growth minded or learning minded unless you model what growth minded and learning minded looks like. And
Yes.
so to model learning and growth means to be vulnerable and to communicate that with your kids, with your
Yes.
daughters. And so for you to share on here, breath work, acknowledging it,
Mhm.
talking with my daughters through this, I think that models growth, and your kids are going to be okay, man. Like, so you're good. They're going to be
I hope
good.
so.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a moment and talk about our community of DMD brothers in the DMD Mastermind. We are men who help each other to stay focused and intentional in our pursuits of personal, professional, physical, financial, emotional, and spiritual growth. We are a community of men who bring courage, wisdom, and transparency to unfiltered conversations that challenge us to be more impactful men, to be dads making a difference. We do this through our online and in-person events where men come together to speak into each other's lives and then turn around and do the deep work to create change in their families, in their businesses, and in the community around them. If you are wondering if this community might be right for you, you can find more information on the DMD Mastermind, and you can also book a call directly with me at dmdmastermind.com. Now, let's get back to our show. But let's get real for a second, because I'm a dad of two kids, you're a dad of three. What are some of the triggers? Like, what are some of the things that
Mm.
you've
Whew.
acknowledged set you to that spot where it's like, okay, breathe.
Yeah. The first one is needing to repeat myself. Um, when they're not listening, right?
Yeah,
And that's the key, when they're not listening. So that is the first thing I needed to recognize. It's like you're repeating yourself because you're not actually communicating in a way that they're receiving the message, right? So
wow,
I had
yeah,
to stop and say, okay, wait, are they busy? Are they playing? Are they doing something where they're just not going to hear you? So it's not an intentional like I'm not going to listen to my dad. I'm going to disobey him intentionally. It's more about I really just wasn't tuned into you right now. So because they're busy. So it's that's been something I'm practicing. And it's like, okay, before I say what I'm going to say,
yeah,
let me confirm that they're actually listening. But that is something the having to needing to repeat myself multiple times is something that has been um, triggering. And the other one is a lack of like a carelessness. Like there's so many times this is a I shake my head because our 4-year-old is notorious for this. So many accidents happen around the house that could have been avoided from my perspective, right? It's like, well, if you had just slowed down when you were doing this thing, or like,
yeah,
use both hands or whatever the situation is. And those things and I'm working on it, right? But they used to bother me a lot more. But now it's realizing they don't know what I know, right? Like
mm,
they are learning. I probably made those mistakes when I was their age. I just don't remember.
yeah,
Um, but they have to go through a process themselves to learn that holding trying to pick up a glass of water with your fingertips. I've seen my 4-year-old try to do this with
yeah.
a full cup. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna spill that. And
Sure
then she
enough,
figures this
it
out. Sure
drops. Yeah,
enough, yeah. So what I would have considered like a silly accident or a mistake is just part of the learning process for them. And I've grown in with my ability to be comfortable with that. And I sense a difference in my own, like I see it coming and I'm like, yeah, it's
yeah.
gonna happen and it's okay.
Wow. I'm thinking right now about some of the words you just used, like, and I think about self-awareness. Are they
Mm,
listen? They're busy. So of course they're not
yeah.
listening. They're focused on something else. Do I have their attention so that they can hear me? So
Mm,
that they know what I'm saying with them. Slow down, take a moment for your kids. and they're able to make mistakes, and I can learn from. Man, I can't think. There's a lot of parallels here for adults that need to be learned. Like, we expect these things of our kids, and you've acknowledged these as part of the growth process for our kids as they're growing up. They're going to make mistakes. We need to be
Mhm.
open to that. I need to communicate in a way that I know they're listening. But man, there are adults that we don't listen to each other,
Mm,
and we're not self-aware of how we're entering into a conversation, and we have our own bias coming into that conversation, and we're
yeah.
not ready to put that aside to connect with someone. And yet we expect this of our kids, and in our profession, and I'm sure in a lot of the, you know, world that you work in, with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
Where does this shut off? Like, how do we like go home, want our kids to do these things, and then we're out working with others or interacting with others, and we're like, oh no, no, I don't have any issues with that. I'm good. I got the answers. Yeah. Yeah. What have you found? Where do we start to maybe shut off to that acceptance piece, that self-awareness piece? What have you seen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I see not just in the DI work, but in general, when in leadership direct report relationships, right? There's
Yeah.
often a breakdown in communication. And I think you yeah, and you mentioned this, it's a lack of self-awareness, but it stems from I often find just needs not being met, right? So often uh, individuals get into these defensive stances because they're out to get something that they need on both sides.
Yeah.
So if they're both doing, so the leader needs their staff member to get something done, but the staff member needs next Friday off because of a family thing, and they can't think about the work until they know that they can, So there's there's that breakdown in communication, that they're not engaging, connecting, and engaging with each other on these things, and being completely transparent about what it is that they're both needing. And I think and at least in my experience, a lot of those issues that I've had to help mediate, it's just people like beating around the bush and not being clear. But they're very clear to me, right? So when they come
Yeah.
talk to me individually, I know exactly what each of them needs. And I'm like, okay, this is easy. Like, let's just have a conversation. And
Yeah.
hey, you need this and you need this. Can we make that happen? Okay, great.
Yeah. There's a reason I asked you that. And the reason I kind of shifted back to that to draw awareness of how we interact with others in the workplace is because I'm going to call guys out who are listening to this. There are men listening to this right now who want to be fantastic fathers, who are putting all the work in raising their kids, and I have self-awareness when I'm at home. I'm being more intentional in my conversations with my wife. I'm taking time to respond and not react, and they're doing all these things in the home. And this podcast is here to challenge you to do that in your house. But you can't do that in your home and then be an a-hole in your workplace, right? You can't, because
Yeah,
you have to be consistent across the environments in which you go, or whatever you're doing is not going to stick. And it's not going to become part of who you are in your internal practice. You need to practice. You're not going to treat your employees, your team members like your children, of course, but you can still use the same filter and personal filter in your interactions with them, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? What you just said made me think of, I have this Bible app where I get like a daily reading,
Yeah.
and I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago. It was I don't remember. I'm not going to quote it, but it basically is you reap what you sow,
Yeah.
right? So if you're doing this at home, if you're trying to reap better, right, with your marriage and with your kids, the same should apply in the workplace, right? So
Yes.
so to your point, it's all connected. It doesn't stop
Yeah.
because it's outside of the home. It's really, when it comes to relationships and dynamics between people, there's a lot of commonality there.
Yeah. I'm going to share why I love this so much, and why I was so excited to have you on. Like, you come from an HR background, you've worked with lots of people in this area. As a vice principal of a school with 117 staff,
Yeah.
having hard conversations, or meaningful or robust, whatever you want to call it, but communicating effectively with others is key. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we have communication as adults where we want certain things, or we need to get something that we need, right,
Yeah.
out of that conversation or that interaction. And then our expectations of our youth, our expectations of our students, of our families, of our kids are different than we
Okay.
have of ourselves. And it's just a time right now to listen to this and sit in it for a moment and say, hey, am I doing this? Like, am I doing this right now? Am I expecting more of other people than I'm expecting of myself? And that's why I appreciate your viewpoint and your experience when it comes to this. If there's a couple steps, we talked about this on our pre-call, like something actionable for the dad who's also an entrepreneur, who is also a business owner, a team member, an employee. If there's something a dad can add right now to his repertoire, to his skill set, or something he can practice that he can be more inclusive, more accepting, model curiosity, emotion, and respect,
Yeah.
what would that be?
Oof. The number one thing that I recommend that has been tremendous in my own journey is getting to know yourself better.
Mm,
Yeah. And
totally.
I'm talking about values, strengths, your triggers, like what sets you off emotionally, and all those kinds of things. The more you know yourself, the more confident you are in how you show up and how you want to show up, right? Because that's all,
Yeah.
it's all connected. And then the less threatening the world is in a way, right? It's not, I think oftentimes, especially in the workplace, conflict stems from insecurity
Mm,
and fear, right? It's like, well, I don't understand this. I don't know this. It doesn't feel good. So
yeah.
I'm going to push against it. As opposed to when you are grounded in your values and you know who you are, then that fear doesn't stand a chance, right? Like it's like, well, I know who I am. What is this? Let's explore it. Like now you have the confidence to say like this isn't going to change me or hurt me or impact me, but it's here at my doorstep. So let's unpack it and let's better understand it. And when yeah, so that's the number one thing I would say.
And I love that you said that because knowing yourself, I'm just drawing, I have this whole pad in front of me. If you're on YouTube, you can see this. And I'm just like drawing arrows right now. And I'm glad you finished with that. Knowing yourself is the most important piece because
Mhm.
without knowing who you are as an individual, what you believe, what you stand for, like what your qualities are, all of that, you're going to be insecure and you're going to have fear
Yeah,
because you won't understand.
yeah,
And if you're insecure and you have fear because you don't know yourself, you'll never be able to be curious,
yeah,
to accept other people and understand others. And if you have insecurity and fear, that's when the triggers and the emotions start to come out in an unhealthy way because you're not quite sure how to react or how you do it in a healthy way. And you tied that right back into the respect piece. And you're good at this, man. You're good at this. I appreciate it. Um, Juan, man, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about what you do with DEI Pro Finder, and even just to send you a message and say, hey, I'm navigating this in maybe my workplace, maybe in my
yeah.
family, and I want to be more open. I want to be
Mhm.
more curious. Where can they connect with you?
Yeah.
Where can they find out more about you?
Absolutely. So I live in two places. So my our website is deiprofinder.com, and I'll make sure to send you the links to all of this. And my email address is Juan, Juan, at deiprofinder.com. And I welcome any messages. I would love to engage with your audience and talk about anything, whether HR, DEI, or being a dad, or again, share more about my personal growth journey and any tips I can share. And then the other place I quote unquote do business is LinkedIn. So that's where
Perfect.
the only social media platform I'm on
Yeah.
because most of my clients are B2B. So yeah, look me up on LinkedIn, but I'll make sure you have that link as well.
Juan, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for taking time away from your family and your girls today to be with us. And go find out Juan. When we're going to make sure Juan's all your contact info is in the show notes. I appreciate you. So thank you so much for doing this.
Same here. Thank you, Cam. This was awesome.